11 minutes past 8 this morning here on OTB AM, which is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. I'm delighted to say we're turning our attention to a routine win for Ireland. Wasn't quite routine, really. It was a bit of a roller coaster against England. And Alan Quinlan is with us. Alan, good morning to you.
Morning, Ger. How are you?
When it got to 15-all, what did you think was going to happen?
That's a good question. It wasn't very comfortable for Ireland. I think they were disjointed and a bit ragged at that stage. I was pretty confident that they would find a little bit of composure and calmness and get the next score, and they did that. Look, it was probably the emotion and intensity that England brought and was very impressive, and they made it very difficult for Ireland at that stage. It was certainly pretty nervy.
That emotion and the celebrating of every penalty and every scrum, like, I can see exactly why England were doing that, and it seemed to have an impact. It certainly spoke to me of a team who believes in their coach, who wasn't like laying down, who wasn't, not playing for him. So all the stuff about the disharmony in England, that all seems to be nonsense, is it?
I wouldn't say there's disharmony. I think they seemed like they stuck together and they reacted to the sending off and the pressure they were under. It's strange when, and I mean this, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but when you read a lot of English journalists and English ex-players saying they were incredibly proud of the team and that was a brilliant performance from England, it's a little bit strange, isn't it? Certainly from being Irish and having an Irish team in Twickenham winning. It's kind of strange where they are at the moment and the uncertainty that's with their team at the moment. But yeah, they looked like they wanted they put up a massive fight, which would be very pleasing for anyone involved in the English setup, because I think after the sending off and if Quinlan Doris's try is given, you'd think Ireland could really run away with this and it could be one-way traffic. But it happens. I've been on teams before where you've gone down to 14 or you've been reduced to man, and it does spur you on and it makes you react. And I think they can certainly take a lot from that point of view. They still have issues from an attacking point of view and where they're at. I agree with Johnny Sexton. Ireland would have lost that game 12 months, 2 years ago. I think you just going back to your first question, the composure they showed was very impressive, and at no stage did they panic. I think if some of the passes kind of stuck earlier on in the game, it could have been a bigger scoreline. And there were issues for Ireland. I know you'll probably ask me about them in a second, but I suppose from an English point of view, you're not clutching at straws. You have to take some positives, and that desire and fight, you can accept that, and that's what English people are probably accepting today.
Scrum, like it was. I know the refereeing. We can get into this now if you want, but what were you going to?
Well, no, when you're talking about the passes not sticking, when you look at this and the sloppy Irish performance, which still results in a game that they won by 17 points in Twickenham, is that not just a part of the stakes of having the extra man, or the pressure of having an extra man? And they've come out on top in that game. The next time that happens, you're like, right, okay, we know what it's like to have the extra man. We know what it's like to have that expectation on us. And a few more of those passes stick. There's a less nervousness around the performance the next time that happens.
The experience of that certainly will stand to them. I think you saw from the Italian game on, when we're playing against 13 men, I think mentally the Irish team thought they could, run around the Italians and there'd be loads of gaps, and there's always going to be a reaction. It's the same in any sport, and you'd be very, very disappointed if you were the opposition coach if that happens to a team that they throw in the towel. I think, and England are, they have a lot of top-class internationals there and British and Irish lines, and they dug in there and showed a great fight. From an Irish point of view, of course they learn from that. They've got to find a way to control the tempo and pick up the tempo of the game and be accurate and not force passes, because if you're down numbers and you're defending and what you want the opposition to do is make a mistake, somebody shoot out of line, make a big tackle, get a lift from that, a bit of energy. And they continuously did that. And Ireland kind of forced some of the passes a little bit. whereas it probably would have been more beneficial to hold on to the ball and keep building and building and building. So it's something that, of course, I think they'll learn from. And it wasn't Ireland's best performance. So Ireland can take so much from that game as well. And you know, if we had this perfect performance that we won by 25 or 30 points and were dominant for the 80 minutes, we'd have other issues with that. We'd be blaming the sending off. So, of course, England showed a massive amount of fight. But I think Ireland definitely need to learn from that situation. Where is the space? What kind of process and what kind of change attack do we need to have? How can we be ultra efficient to keep the ball? Because if you keep the ball for a long period of time, the space is going to open up somewhere. It happens when there's 15 on 15. And I think Ireland just got little half breaks, offloaded out of the tackle, weren't ruthless enough and efficient enough, certainly when they got into good areas.
What happened in the scrum, in your view?
In my view, and I watched it back about 5 times, and obviously I'm open to people having a different opinion. I'm sure they will have. I think there was probably 2 out of the 6 were penalties to England. 2 or 3 of them could have been penalties to Ireland, and there was certainly one of them that just should have been reset. I haven't got the pictures here to show you and show the viewers and show you the angles, but England were pushing after the ball, after the engagement in every scrum. They were crabbing to the left and then running around the corner. Like, it's very, very hard to do anything about that from an Irish point of view. And they are a very powerful scrum. Genge is incredibly strong and physical and powerful, and Sinclair is as well a good scrummager. But the question I'll ask is how that's never happened to Tadhg Furlong before. There's nothing he could have done. Genge was running around the corner, and then Tom Curry or the other flankers were sliding up the side, and he was getting shoulders into the side of the ribs. So I thought Mathieu Raynal, it's hard when it happens. It's hard to change it. The perception goes into the referee's head. And, you know, England were, you know, they're a very, very powerful scrum. Ireland are missing Andrew Porter and Ronan Kelleher, which they were a big loss. But it just kind of capitulated and went to that stage where Mathieu Raynal just kept awarding England all the time. And they weren't all penalties. I think 2 of them were penalties, and there's no way Ireland's scrum will capitulate like that 6 times and 6 penalties. I don't agree with him, and I watched him back countless times, and I would urge any of the commentators who are going to join in and say I'm wrong, watch him again and watch the angles, watch the overhead camera, and look at the angles that at times Genge and other occasions Sinclair, where their hips are and what angle they're going in at. But I think, again, you're talking about a learning curve. Ireland will learn from that. And, you know, particularly Dan Sheehan as a hooker, there's a lot of pressure on him. He's big, he's tall, and they've got to find a way to maybe stay a bit tighter and change that picture a little bit when a team are kind of moving around the corner. They didn't just run around the corner. They moved around the corner and then drove at a different angle, which is, it's hard to do anything about if it's not refereed correctly. So, and I spoke to a lot of people on this yesterday, and as I said, I watched every scrum numerous times, and I think if Mathieu Raynal looks back at those scrums and in his review, he'll get different feedback on those scrums.
You could see in the aftermath that the Ireland coaching ticket were very clearly saying, we have a Razzie style video ready to go, we won't be leaking it, but we're going through the right channels, but we will be highlighting all of the issues. I mean, Tadhg Furlong did say it in the middle of the game. When this is happening, is there anything else that you can do to...
I think being a bit cynical yourself and getting your wing forwards to maybe slide off the prop and actually drive up into that English wheel may help a little bit. I probably have done it before when I've been in, you know, played matches. Again, it's something that maybe they need to be ready to do, because other teams will try and do it now. Then it's the perception of what the referee will think the next time. But I would ask the question, I would ask people to look at this. how many of those 6 penalties were England actually going legitimately straight? How many? Every scrum twisted to a point, and then the drive came on at a different angle. There was no scrum where, maybe one of them where they got a shunt on, and I think Dave Kilcoyne lost his feet, which can happen to any prop. But look, it's Matthew Proudfoot, their scrum coach, I think had a tactic, and sometimes everyone kind of has tactics in scrums as well about moving their feet a little bit, getting a little early hit, whatever the case may be. And their tactics work for them. And then it just went to the point there where Match and Renal had this perception in his mind that England had this dominant scrum. And they probably would have had Ireland under pressure anyway, even if the scrum stayed square. But there's no way Ireland's scrum is that bad, even without Porter and Kelleher.
So when you kind of consider that in the context of everything, like, is that not this massive kind of ray of hope for Ireland over the next little while? Because what the criticism has been in the past is that Ireland go to Twickenham or some other place in the Six Nations, have a big win on the scoreline, and not much is learned. The feet aren't on the ground anymore. Ireland get carried away. It feels, certainly this morning, as if it's the exact opposite of that Ireland have got the win and are doing anything but getting carried away. In fact, England are the ones who are probably reflecting on this in a more positive light.
They're right to reflect on it, because you have to find some positives, in fairness. But from an Irish point of view, I think, you go back to the Grand Slam winning match. It was a fantastic performance, a great win over in Twickenham. Struggled a number of times on 3 occasions there, got well dominated and beaten. And we go there this time and come away with a bonus point win. People say the game was ruined with the sending off. It wasn't ruined. It probably hampered England and changed the game. Would we got the same sort of excitement? Maybe we're better off playing against 15 players and winning those games. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. But look, it wasn't Ireland's best performance, and probably the thing that stands out to me when I looked at the stats and went back on it is 17 turnovers, and that tells you a story that Ireland were a little bit sloppy at times, and sometimes that comes down to brilliant pressure, and England put them under a lot of pressure, which is totally understandable. So I think Ireland can take a fair bit from that, and nobody's going to get too carried away and say we're going to win a World Cup here, because I think it's a very important victory. And I said it before the game, mentally for these players, the result is there now, and people can debate why and how and what happened. But I think from an Irish point of view, it was a big step forward for this group, and a really important one.
When we're talking about not winning this game in the past, is it like under the current coaching ticket, or are they actually, when they talk about it, do they mean that in the previous coaching ticket, when if we'd gone a man up, we would have kept box kicking and not held onto the ball and not tired them out and therefore not won the game? I wasn't quite sure I understood exactly.
I think a bit of both, Chair. I think probably in more in recent times, maybe up to that turn that we saw last year, I think it comes down to confidence. When you're a player out in the field and there's pressure on, it's how you deal with that pressure in your head and how you find a little bit of calmness and a few leaders speak up and react and keep your composure. I think the reaction in France, in Paris, would suggest that they're pretty mentally strong and in a good place, because that was a game that could have really got away from them as well, and the reaction was superb. When they chased that game and got it back to 1 point against France. I think the same, I was impressed with the mental calmness when England got back to 15-all on Saturday, just about keeping calm, no panic, and try and get up there. And then Jack Conan try was obviously vital, and I just think the reaction for the last 10 minutes was very, very important and telling. And you could probably sense that it was going to happen. You asked me a question at the start, how did I feel when I was 15-all? I didn't feel great about that, to be honest. And I think a lot of English people would have been very enthused, but there was a kind of part of me thought, just take control of the game. Even if you get a couple of penalties here, and just move away and win the game by 3 or 6 points. England never really looked like winning the game, and I know they were hampered by the 14 points, but they never had any sustainable pressure in our line. They never looked like scoring tries from distance. They had, I think, 6 clean line breaks. Ireland had up near 20. Very, very impressive with finding the space and the accuracy. But again, just that last pass, and they could have been more ruthless. And that's one thing they've got to learn from this, is taking your opportunities. They've got to be better at that, much better at that, because when you go to a World Cup in 18 months' time, there might be one chance. If you get into that situation with New Zealand or France, there might be one chance in the game, and you've got to make sure that you take it. So there's no guarantee we will, and we keep talking about the World Cup. It's still going to be incredibly difficult for Ireland to go past, even get to a quarterfinal or go past it. And it's all part of that learning curve. So I think they're in a good place mentally. Do we have concerns about front row depth, more depth in the second row? The halfback situation, a little bit more depth there, and the players behind Johnny Sexton getting up another level, of course. But, we're in a good, decent position at the moment, I think. And hopefully, we're in a stronger position when we go to that World Cup situation.
What changes are you looking to make this week?
I'm not sure. I haven't reflected on the changes to the game yet. But look, I think Ian Henderson will come into the game. He was a little bit rusty, probably over enthusiastic. Give away 2 penalties, which probably he'd be disappointed at looking back.
I blame Neil Tracy on this show, by the way, for one of those, the latch in the line out to help the extra ballast in the maul. It was something that he had shown and highlighted on his pick 6. It wasn't pick 6, obviously. It was
side 5.
About 2 years ago. It's been an Ireland tactic where you do kind of just illegally nudge in the wrong side, and the referees have obviously cottoned onto it and gone, sorry lads, that's the second time we've done that to 6 Nations, stop doing it.
Yeah, everyone is picking that up, and I think the one where Itoje comes in the line out and holds the ball up and forces them all as well, is something that would be disappointing. Where the blocking was there, but look, he's an incredible player, Maro Itoje, really, really devastating. And if you look at what he did when Gary Ringrose picked up the ball at the ruck, when Caelan Doris's try was disallowed, that he saved a try there, basically. There was a time where you couldn't put your hand through and grab the ball or play the scrum halves hands. You can now when he picks up the ball. There was a bit of debate about that. And what he did was legitimate. He's a brilliant player. But Ian Henderson, I think, he's a great player for Ireland, has been. But those 2 penalties would be disappointing for him. He'll obviously come in. Do you start Kilcoyne over Cian Healy because it's Scotland? I don't know, possibly. And Jack Corner will certainly be knocking on Andy Farrell's door this week. Not literally, but he'll be in his mind about the performance and the impact he made when he came off the bench. But other than that, I think, Robbie Henshaw, he was outstanding, wasn't he? I think that's a true kind of warrior performance coming on there. Showed his experience, showed his toughness. Made some great carries there, even when a couple of balls went loose in the ground, and got over the gain line and was really, really important. But it's a good position because, Bundy Aki and Robbie Henshaw, it's hard to separate them. They're both brilliant players. You'd love to have that kind of that same competition in other areas. The back 3 were outstanding, weren't they? So I don't see any changes there. So I see minimal changes. Maybe Robbie Henshaw and Jack Conan may come to mind.
I'm just looking at the score when we played them in 2020 in Twickenham. It was 24-12. I don't know if everybody remembers this game, but Ireland scored a try like deep into injury time at the end of the second half to make it vaguely respectable. So we absolutely got annihilated by an England team, and it's not a million miles from. There's a few players so Herring started, but Healy started, Devon Toner started, CJ Stander started, Conor Murray started, Stockdale and Larmour. But apart from that, everybody else
It's
is
just half the team, Jerry, named.
yeah. But in fairness, it is. But Ronan Kelleher was on the bench.
Yeah, there's
Caelan
still,
Doris
yeah,
was
of
on the
course.
bench. And it wasn't like they were like they're not close to the squad or whatever. Obviously Toner's
But
gone.
what do we expect going to Twickenham any year? No matter how good we are, it's always going to be tough. It's always going to be tough going to Paris, where we're England and France should always be the top two teams. They have more players, bigger leagues, bigger pools of players to pick from. So we shouldn't be finding reasons to be negative around the team here. I think, given you look at the mistakes that were made and maybe things they need to be better at, and Ireland have to be incredibly efficient no matter when they're playing the top teams in the world, because we're never really going to overpower a team and be bigger than them or more physical than them. But there's a lot to be really pleased at. The way Ireland stuck to the plan of still trying to find space, moving the ball, the accuracy needs to get a little bit better on some of those passes. And when the opposition analyse Ireland, they're going to try and break them down and not let them get into multi-phase. So there's a lot to be pleased about, but certainly it was a fantastic win in the end. Nervy in the middle, and maybe if you're being critical, Ireland should have been more ruthless and made it more comfortable for themselves.
All right, Alan, good stuff. Thanks a million. We'll talk to you later in the week. Cheers.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.
It's Alan Quinlan there. Time for the papers.